We are here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's December 5th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin filling in for Shin Yeon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Nal Song.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Cheska Dainha.
Happy Tuesday, everyone.
Happy Tuesday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Now, as usual, let's start with the news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. We start here in Korea. The sign-up process for the Youth Leap account has become shorter for single-person households from Monday. The savings account previously had a 2-week waiting period, but as of yesterday, applicants living alone can expect their accounts to be activated 3 days after they register. Now, this account allows individuals between 19 and 34 years old earning a gross salary of 60 million Korean won or less to save up to 50 million won by making a monthly deposit of 700,000 won for 5 years. Since its introduction in July, more than 470,000 subscribers have signed up. Now moving on, Seoul City announced on Monday that it has launched a new ride-hailing service for non-Korean tourists. The app Taba enables user verification through local phone numbers and allows payments through overseas credit or debit cards. By simply entering your destination, users can obtain the estimated riding distance and taxi fare. The service is currently available in English, Chinese, Japanese, and Thai, but the city plans to offer Vietnamese, Indonesian, and Russian services by the first half of next year. Finally, on the cultural front, the Korean movie 12/12 The Day has secured the top spot at the Korean box office for 12 straight days. Attracting over 4.6 million viewers as of Monday, the film has hit its break-even point and is expected to surpass 5 million viewers today. Now, what's interesting is that although the film is based on the 12/12 military coup on 1979, over half of the audience are millennials and Gen Zs. So I want to ask you guys, as part of this generation, have you watched this movie? If so, how did you find the movie, and why do you think this movie is drawing so much attention among our generation?
You know, I think it's really interesting because this is one of those movies that actually is based on a historical era that we did not live through, and yet it is very popular among our generation. And I think it kind of hooked us on two aspects. One is definitely the prevalence of social media. So I think people got really excited to kind of showcase and upload how angry or how excited they got, which now we'll explain a little bit later. But another thing that I would like to focus on is the fact that our generation is particularly keen on social justice and rights of ourselves. So because this drama, this movie sort of highlights, you know, this battle to secure democracy and sort of trying to fight, quote unquote, the evil, the good versus evil, I think that's where people really kind of were drawn in. So even though we didn't live this era, we find it very, very important to fight and secure the basic rights that we have as human beings.
You know, that's exactly what I felt when I saw the movie a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was the best movie of 2023.
Wow. Serious? You're giving it that much title?
Yeah, it was amazing. So how about you, Niall?
I guess I'll have to go see it now. I mean, it's the end of the year. I've been kind of busy, haven't been to the theaters in a while. But I mean, first of all, having Hwang Jung-min and Chung Woo-sung as the main lead.
Stellar lineup.
Yeah, I think we grew up with them on the big screen, and they're such great actors, so that grabbed our attention. But also historically, like Cheska was mentioning, this is one of the most significant events, and it's still a sensitive issue that's still being talked about to this day. But apparently the movie's so great that it makes you so angry. Your heart rate goes up watching this, that people on social media are now doing it as like a social media challenge, where you show your watch, smartwatch, tracking your heart rate from before, during, and after the movie. Maybe you don't need exercise, your heart rate just goes up like
watch it 5 times.
Yeah, so
I don't know how healthy it is if your heart rate is skyrocketing at like 170 as the movie sort of climaxes, but I hope everybody's okay who are watching this.
All right, that was our news feed for this Tuesday. So we're now going to shift gears and move on to our main discussion topic of the day. Here in Korea, we're seeing more and more NEET tribes. So have you heard of NEET? If you haven't, here's my AI voice secretary with the details.
NEET. It's an acronym for not in education, employment, or training. NEET tribes refer to millennials and Gen Zs, who are intentionally on hiatus from work. What's interesting is their deliberate choice not to pursue another job during this break. This marks a shift from the traditional narrative that has pushed the young generation toward an instant job search right after finishing school and to quickly bounce back into the workforce if they've lost or quit their job.
So more and more young people are taking a break from work here in Korea. Now, we're used to hearing about the struggles of young individuals trying to get employed and even being forced into an involuntary break due to the lack of available jobs. However, these so-called NEET tribes are choosing to keep themselves unemployed. So today we're going to look into the reasons behind this phenomenon. But let's start off by talking about who exactly falls under this category for those who are really unfamiliar with this concept.
Absolutely. So this so-called NEET tribe are people who are not actively seeking employment and are willingly taking a quote-unquote sort of a gap state in their career. So this does not involve people who have been laid off or who want to be employed but can't find a job. And as Yujin mentioned, this is quite unique because, you know, instead of being in an unemployment status involuntarily, these constitute a group of people who are very willingly and who are wanting to take this sort of a gap state in their career. And according to the survey, about 80% of those people have a record of employment, so that it is very highly likely that they voluntarily left the job to sort of pursue this gap state. And as Niall will explain a little bit later, the number seems to keep increasing as years go by.
Right. So now turning to you, Niall, how many NEETs are we actually seeing in Korea?
So in Korea this year, there are currently 410,000 young people who are taking a break from work. And this is taking up about 5% of the current young population. And this number has been slowly increasing since 2016.
Right.
And the thing about these resting youth is that, like Cheska was mentioning, that a lot of them already has work experience and they're choosing not to further work. They're taking that gap. And they go into their workplace after education and they quit and they don't search for another job to hop onto, which is not very common up until this point.
Right, so it's certainly an interesting and new phenomenon. And as you mentioned, there is a noticeable tick in the number of NEETs in the country, but we're always curious about why. So back to you, Niall. Why do you think are some of the reasons why millennials and Gen Zs are taking a break from work?
Right. So the Ministry of Strategy and Finance has reported results of a specific survey, and let's take a look at the screen. And they said the reason why many people didn't immediately seek jobs after quitting were as follows. 33% said difficulty finding desired work, the type of job that they really like. And 24% said they're still preparing for the next job, whether it be, you know, doing things, studying things, or finding the job. 18% of them, unfortunately, said they have health issues. Others said 25%, and it's just personal issues that they did not want to mention. And while there are those who stopped job hunting due to really high unemployment rates and they're really tired from that and they failed to find a job, recently many youth seem to take breaks when moving from one job to the next. And I think they would rather take that break and stop than to settle for a job that they're not completely satisfied with.
Yeah, and I think that this kind of links back to what we talked about yesterday. We talked about how millennials and Gen Zs are really value-driven. They make decisions based on their values and beliefs. And as you mentioned, not choosing to get employed because it's not their desired job kind of shows this trend that our generation is very value-based and value-driven. So I think that there are shifts in perspectives and also priorities towards work and careers among millennials and Gen Zs when compared to previous generations. What do you think?
I absolutely agree on the term that you used, value-driven, because just based on my own experience, I have friends, colleagues and peers who have left their job to sort of prepare their own startup companies or to, you know, spend time on upgrading their skills on their own terms rather than seeking an employment right after. You know, just to give you a comparison, like older generation, I think, sort of saw employment as more of a duty and sort of as a responsibility. Like my grandfather, who recently just passed away, worked till his very last day, clocking in 9 to 5 on a job that he kept for a very long time. Now, opposed to that, I think our generation is definitely more quality driven when it comes to choosing employment or even maintaining an employment status. So I think there's a definitely comparison. And, you know, interestingly enough, there was a UK survey that was done that showed that people between 18 and 24 were about 4 times 4 times more likely.
4 times.
4 times more likely to take a gap year than those employed in the 40s and the 50s. So just according to that, I mean, the contrast is quite dramatic and stark.
Right, so the numbers speak for themselves. This is indeed a growing trend among our generation. So we talked about the situation here in Korea, but how big is the NEET tribe globally? To find out, we asked our viewers if they've taken a break from work and about the reasons behind their decision. Now here's what 3 of them had to say. So MIMS says, after my teaching contract expired, I decided not to work for 6 months due to anxiety over safety issues. I also had to take a 3-day break mid-year due to fear after a viable shooting threat was made against the school. Tasmia says, I only take a break if I have health issues or have family emergencies. Other than that, I don't take a break as I don't want to be thought as lazy. Now, Realex says, there was a time that I would work 15 to 16 hours a day. Wow, while it was good for my career and my finances, it was not good for my health. Taking time off from that busy schedule was like rediscovering and re-energizing myself. So just by looking at these comments, we can see that there are like divided opinions. Some say they are taking a break, but some say they're not. So now let's further expand our discussion and include an HR specialist in our talks to find out more about the NEET tribe. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. So today we're joined by Sarah Park, Head of Korea HR and APAC GP. Welcome, Sarah, to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Good morning, Sarah.
Thank you. So first of all, is the NEET, which stands for Not an Education, Employment, or Training phenomenon, unique to Korea, or is it prevalent in other parts of the world as well?
It's a good question. Actually, the NEET phenomenon is not unique to Korea. It's a global issue, and it's prevalent in various countries, each with its own socioeconomic and cultural context. In Japan and parts of Europe and the USA, for instance, high NEET rates have been a concern for years. The trend often reflects broader economic challenges such as job market mismatches, economic recessions, or changes in work culture. And from an HR perspective, understanding the root causes in each region is really crucial for developing an effective employment strategies.
I have a second question. With the increasing number of people who are disengaging from work, what are the positive, if there are, and negative aspects of this trend?
So on a positive aspect side, the trend can sometimes indicate that young people are taking time to pursue higher education, skills training, or personal development activities that may not be classified as formal education or employment. And this can lead to a more skilled and self-aware workforce in the long term, which is obviously good for companies. But on a negative aspect, we can think of the downsides being prolonged disengagement that can lead to skill atrophy, reduced employability, and a disconnect from the labor market entirely. And it can also impact mental health and social integration as a whole. And from an HR standpoint, it's really essential to create pathways for these individuals to re-engage with the workforce through training programs or flexible work options, or, for example, working from home.
Sarah, you pointed out some really good aspects of how the HR could, help these young workforces. But in your opinion, what could be a fundamental solution to sort of help the young, workforce be more actively engaged in seeking employment or staying in their employment status?
Really, the key is to align work opportunities with the values and expectations of millennials and Gen Z. This generation tends to seek meaningful, flexible, and balanced work, as you guys mentioned earlier. And therefore, fundamental solutions really might include workplace flexibility, offering those remote work options, flexible hours, and a focus on work-life balance, giving purpose-driven work, which means emphasizing on the social impact and purpose of the organization, continuous learning, providing opportunities for ongoing skills development and career advancement, and also an inclusive culture that fosters a diverse and inclusive workplace where every employee feels valued and heard. Really, these strategies can help and create an attractive work environment that resonates with the aspirations and lifestyle preferences of the younger generations.
All right, thank you, Sarah, so much for your useful solutions and advice. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
So we're seeing a wide range of policies being introduced by the Korean government to help millennials and Gen Zs bounce back into the workforce. So let's talk about these solutions, these policies, and what your thoughts are about them.
I mean, the government policies to support university students to find jobs right after graduation, it's expanding youth internships to give them more work experience before going into actual work. There's various types of gatherings for these people, psychological support, and approximately 1 trillion Korean won of budget is going in, which is about 760 million US dollars. While I do think it's great that they're supporting this area and it is necessary, I also feel like the support of taking gap years is also necessary, but I'll get into that a little later.
Right, so a lot of more, giving more opportunities, definitely more whopping, bigger investment. Now, anything to add on, Cheska?
Yeah, you know, according to the survey, about half of the people that voluntarily left the work were mostly due to harassment or issues that took place in the workplace. And these are actually fundamental rights of any human beings or any employment status, I believe. So I think there should definitely be policies implemented to protect and secure employees in any situation that kind of, you know, crosses these basic human rights. But as Sarah so eloquently mentioned, I think these welfare benefits, especially mental and physical health well-being, I think is quite crucial to our generation. And there have been multiple psychology research that have been done that the work efficiency highly increases when the HR has a very robust system that kind of takes care of the mental well-being of the employees.
That's definitely a good point. And I think Sarah, when she talked to us, she talked about how we should find the root cause and maybe improving the working environment here in Korea or in other parts of the world might be a good way to help these young generations get back into the workforce.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So, and let's talk about the future, because we're always future-oriented. We're the new generation. So when talking about the labor market for young people, what direction do you think we should be heading in?
Right, so I was mentioning earlier how I do think that supporting youth not having a gap year is important, but also supporting youth to have that time to rest or even to think is also very necessary.
Really important.
Experience is really great, but just doing experience for the sake of a resume is so heavily emphasized that I think oftentimes we forget where the focus should be lying. And in terms of the job market, Sarah was mentioning that we need to have better welfare and flexibility from companies, and I think that's so crucial and definitely what this generation is looking for, value in terms of life and work balance, and not just in financial or materialistic welfares, but just creating this safe environment. Cheska was mentioning how earlier many people leave workplaces because of harassment or just a lot of mental, emotional struggles. And I think it's so critical that we create a safe environment professionally and emotionally.
I think you made a very good point, and I think that in order for us to really absorb that experience well, we need appropriate, amount of break and resting, because we are not machines, because we always need to rest so that we can absorb all of it.
And I think that flexibility plays into that, because the flexibility, remote working allows somebody to kind of find that within the workplace. So we don't have to take an entire gap year. Sometimes that's necessary, but if you have a job that allows you to think in your free time and spend time with your family and process things on a daily basis, I really think that's the value that our generation really thinks is great.
Right, just by like shifting the working environment might help these younger generation. Now, what do you think, Cheska?
You know, I think Niall said it very, very beautifully, and I agree with everything that she said. But if I may add, I think, you know, a job market, like any market, I think it works two-way street, meaning there's the employer side and the employee side. So while we talked extensively about the employer that needs to, you know, kind of work on these fundamental welfare benefits, as an employee, as a young workforce, you know, there will always come a time when, just like the academia, when you take a gap year, we will have to explain ourselves and how we spent those gap years. And as Bernard Shaw said, I do hope that the youth is not wasted on the young.
Youth is not wasted
on the young, because it's a very powerful, very special, once in a lifetime era that we get.
Right.
So I do hope that all the young folks that are willing to take a gap year really use their time to grow, explore, and mature over the time so they can come back.
I think self-reflection is such a big thing. If you are resting, taking a gap year for an entire year, like Cheska was saying, it needs to be a time of reflection. It shouldn't. When you mean when people say waste, it means it's spent in vain and you can't get anything out of it. But when I say I value rest, I think it should be a time of reflection for somebody. And if you did grow psychologically or emotionally growing stronger,
skillfully or anything,
it should be something that you could explain to employers, future employers, and they should be able to take that in and saying, oh, that is something of value that this person grew emotionally or in a different skill set.
Yeah, I mentioned a similar thing before, but I think that resting well really gives you the power to excel.
Exactly.
To live a better life in the future. Right, so unfortunately that's all the time we have for today, but we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korean time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Nal Song.
No problem.
And Cheska Dainha.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News
Generation.